Did you know that in 2012 Cyprus had a financial crisis because they had too much debt and the European Union didn't bail them out? And the craziest part is how they solved the issue. Every local bank account with more than 100,000 euros was split in half. Meaning one day you woke up and your 1 million was only half a million now. Well, that was not a really motivating intro, but there is more, so let me explain. Hey everybody, it's Rico, and in this video I'm going to talk about which bank accounts I'm using personally as well as for my businesses and what I recommend you if you're planning on banking in Cyprus. The economical crisis of 2012 and 13 was actually not just in Cyprus but also in Greece, because these two governments oftentimes go hand in hand. And there were many different reasons for the crisis, but one of the biggest ones was over-leveragement of the government. Cyprus government bonds were becoming basically worthless. This then led to the fact that the Cyprus government obviously had to come up with a rescue plan, and as the EU didn't show immediate assistance, they then decided to seize almost half of the bank accounts with more than 100,000 euros in it, because this is the threshold that is always secured in the European Union. And I'm saying almost half because it was actually about 48%. And that's why ideally you should never have more than 100k in one single bank account. No money under 100,000 euros was affected, but all of the bank accounts with more than 100,000 were affected. Also, mostly citizens of other countries were affected, because the locals here in Cyprus, they normally don't have that much money in their bank account. Obviously some of them do, but normally they don't. And most of the rich people that had offshore bank accounts here in Cyprus, they were the people that actually were affected by this. In total, more than 1 billion euros was frozen overnight, and this is a perfect example of 1. How dumb over-leveragement can be if you don't know what you're doing, 2. Why you should never put all of your eggs in one basket, and 3. Why full ownership of your own assets are so important without intermediaries, and why everyone that has a lot of money should protect their wealth with alternative assets or other currencies. Enough about history, and let's talk about today. We do have 3 big local banks here in Cyprus, and that is 1, the Bank of Cyprus, the Hellenic Bank and the Alpha Bank. And those 3 are the biggest ones. Obviously there are more smaller ones, for example, but the 3 you will find on almost every corner on every street. Opening a local private bank account here in Cyprus is actually pretty self-explanatory, especially if you're a resident here in Cyprus. You just go to a bank of your choice, then you fill out endless documents, and eventually you will end up with a private bank account. Benefits of owning a local bank account are definitely that you could apply for a loan, for example, and then you could buy properties, other businesses with borrowed money, but only do this if you know what you're doing and if you have enough assets to protect yourself in a rare case, but definitely possible case of a failure. However, from my own experience and from the experience from a lot of people that I helped moving to Cyprus, getting a loan here in Cyprus is so much harder than in other countries, because that can take a very long time and also is associated with a very big and long due diligence. In fact, I would argue that it's not even worth it for most people, because here in Cyprus you also need to show a very strong history of a high salary. And this is counterproductive for non-dom individuals that live in Cyprus, because for us it makes most sense to pay out high dividends. If we only pay out a high salary because of the fact that we can get a loan in the future, maybe, then we will pay so much money on the social insurance for a very long period of time, 2 to 3 years, and then at the end you don't even have the guarantee that you will get the loan. And if you don't understand quite yet what I mean, then watch this video about the tax benefits here in Cyprus, where you will find more details on that topic. So, for me personally, I decided to go with fintech companies as a private account because they are very easy to set up and also very cheap. More specifically, I'm currently going with Revolut as well as Wise. For corporate local banking, so if you're an entrepreneur, you have your own company just like me, then also the same 3 local banks applied that I mentioned before in the private banking. But for corporate banking, the local banks actually charge fees, and they are relatively high if you compare it to other banks such as fintechs, for example. And that is 1, you need to pay a fee of about 400 to 500 euros for the start of the application, and that in most cases you would get back, but since recently I heard cases where they just don't pay back the application fee. So definitely if you start this process, ask the bank if you would get that money back. And then 2, every local bank in Cyprus charges a monthly fee for corporate banking, and that is around 50 euros per month. There is also an inactivity fee, so if you're not sending or receiving money, it's about less than 10 transactions per quarter, you're paying an extra 100 euros per quarter if you're inactive. And also the application and the opening process of opening a bank account for your Cyprus Limited company or for other companies takes so much longer than opening a private bank account, because there is a much bigger due diligence behind it. And yes, unfortunately, they will ask a lot of questions, they will ask for some documents, they will ask where this or that money is from, but this is actually the case in almost every country these days, and if you don't want to have that, you have to open your own bank, and I will be your client. But also, of course, you also have the option for a fintech bank account for your company. And actually it depends on what business you're doing and how much money you have, if a local bank account or a fintech bank account makes more sense for you. And I must admit, because of the past of Cyprus, the things we talked about earlier and also some other things, fintech banks, they actually look very carefully. If a Cyprus Limited company is applying for a bank account, they, for example, look at AML, they look at the KYC very carefully, they do other due diligence, and also they just ask you where you're receiving money from and where you're sending it to and how much. But in most cases, also fintech bank accounts, they will eventually open up a bank account for you. With a little bit of patience, this is definitely possible. I have about 3 fintech bank accounts that I'm using for my Cyprus Limited companies. And that is 1, Wise, once again, 2, a Revolut business, and 3, a relatively new bank. And because of that, I don't feel comfortable mentioning the name here, but if you want to know what bank it is, leave a comment or check the video description. And definitely be careful with new banks that are not that big yet. What if they would end up being not trustworthy or whatever? And yes, of course, I know that also big banks, they can go bankrupt, but the chances are definitely smaller there. But the good thing about this third bank is that they somehow managed to be able to open CY IBAN bank accounts, which actually before only local bank accounts could do, because a lot of fintechs, they open IBAN bank accounts with countries from Estonia, Lithuania, countries like that. But this new bank, they were able to do it with a CY IBAN, and I actually need a CY IBAN to receive money from a specific company, and that was pretty awesome and easy without a local bank account. Anyway, let's talk about the documents that you will need if you're opening a bank account here in Cyprus, and definitely make sure that you have all of those very fundamental documents, because this will save you a lot of time, because they will ask you for this anyway. And that is 1, the shareholder certificate of your company, obviously. 2, the secretary and directory document, the incorporation certificate, so when your company was established, under which name. 4, the certificate of the registered address of your company. 5, and now we are talking about personal documents, and that is 1 utility bills, or 1 utility bill either from water, electricity, ideally internet and mobile phone contracts, they usually don't work. And then 2, it's a passport, or actually passports of all of the shareholders if you're not the only owner of the company. And then 3, the proof of address of all shareholders as well. And this can also be a title deed if you own a property here in Cyprus, or this can be the rental contract if you, for example, rent a property here. Those are the most important documents that a bank is always asking for, so definitely make sure you have them. There will also be other documents probably that they will ask you for, but you cannot prepare for that because it's very individual. Also, all of the certificates and documents that I just mentioned, they need to be no older than 12 months. So if it's a document from 2 to 3 years ago, you will probably need to renew it. If you have partners from a different country, let's say in another continent, for example, this will also take a little bit longer because of the due diligence. And if you have a nominee structure, this will also take a little bit longer. In general, be careful with these things. These days, it's not as easy as it was before. And if you do it on your own and you want to go to the local bank account, either open a personal bank account or a corporate bank account, be aware that maybe it makes sense to get some professional help, because there is a language barrier in a lot of local banks. Not everyone is talking English, and this can also be done remotely, for example, so you will not need to fly to Cyprus to open a local bank account. From my own experience, once you successfully opened a bank account in Cyprus, Sending and receiving money is actually pretty straightforward and easy, and I actually also never had some frozen transactions, for example, even when I'm sending or receiving mid 5-figures amount of money. Within 4 years of banking here in Cyprus, the really only issue I had so far was recently receiving money from Dubai, and then at the end we actually found out that the issue was from the sender and not here in Cyprus. Also, one story that really drove me crazy was that 1.5 years ago my Wise account was actually frozen for 3 weeks. I couldn't pay anybody, and back then they were still called TransferWise, but once my bank account was reopened after I had to send them so many new documents again, then I immediately sent money to another bank account and a little bit of money to another bank account, and as I'm learning from my own mistakes now, I always have at least 3 bank accounts for me as an individual and for every business that I have. No one can stop me. Cryptocurrencies. Unfortunately, this is not very easy if you're dealing with cryptocurrencies and you're regularly trading between fiat and crypto. However, there are definitely some solutions with crypto exchanges, but you probably know they can also be a little bit risky, so this definitely needs an individual consultation, and definitely do a very big research before you decide to go with one bank or another. Again, make sure to watch this video about why Cyprus is the best low-tax country, and I will see you there.